Ismail and Vardhanaji.
Okay, so again, Waiguru Ka Kausa Waiguru Ki Fate, welcome. Today, I wanted to uh, recap what has happened since the beginning of the opening of the Lion's Gate, because that is in essence, a planting of a seed that we can continue to cultivate. So I wanted to, as concisely and accurately recap what we went through for the first 3 days and then look at how that can unfold out into a process we engage in from now until the new year, and how that process can also be something that we take part in every single day. And so, first to begin, I wanted to just have a thought about how most spiritual teachings envision the idea of us being part of a vast ocean of consciousness, and that waves form out of that consciousness, coming up in kind of a triangle, but moving so that they move from some inciting incidents, a beginning, rising up to a crisis point, an apex or a zenith, and then curl over and crash down in what we think of a resolution. So this is the same nature of any story, and we see it particularly in the theater, because theater's often one act, 3 act, or 5 act play, and those 3 points, the inciting incident, the crisis, and the resolution, are the main points in movement that the acts follow. And that's something similar to what each one of us is experiencing when we are not conscious, when we're not aware of the process that we are bound within. It's only when a crisis happens that our attention then focuses on the the crisis. And usually the crisis begins with an inciting incident. Something happens where two forces meet. We could think of this as the thermodynamics of consciousness, a high pressure front and a low pressure front. We're merrily flowing along in this low pressure state of awareness, and then some high pressure front hits us. And the two intersecting causes this rising of the anvil, a cumulonimbus cloud, which the 38th Pore speaks about. This, we're being pounded by the tools of wisdom on the anvil of understanding. That the awareness tends to be asleep, and because of its being asleep, it doesn't see the pressure front coming, and it seems to arise out of nowhere. And this meeting of the high pressure, some cause of concern that we become aware of, then raises our attention. And it's in that tension, that's where we get the word attention from. There's a movement into this focus, focused awareness. And most of us experience that by default. Forces happen that we're not aware of. And so we're experiencing the world or the universe or life itself as happening to us. And that is this wave formation. We rise out of a state of awareness, to a state of be awareness. So the word beware. We usually don't raise our attention until we feel some threat, and that threat being existential, it draws all our focus to it. And this is wasn't what isn't mentioned in the 7 steps of um, creation, particularly in the, say, the Masonic traditions, or the traditions that the Masonic tradition drew out of, because there's an 8th stage. I'm not going to go through all of the stages now, but just being aware that these 7 stages, what is left out is what is most important. And that's the see awareness. All right. So we could say the see and the where, right? And that spells care. That moving from awareness to be awareness to careness. We give our energy to what we care about. That's how it is. If
So,
we're, yes.
no, no, I'm listening. Thanks.
Okay. So we're usually moving in a state of we only care about something when we think our attention has been drawn to it, but it's actually the other way around. It's actually the inverse, that we take our attention to what we care about. And so we're moving through this ABC, simple to remember. ABC, 1, 2, 3. That most of us are being controlled by the Lord of Death. As an organism, we're afraid of dying because we perceive ourselves to be the limitation of the vessel that we're within. And therefore, the thought of dying, anything that threatens that identity that we've come to believe is us, but is a fictition. The persona mask, persona, as in as voice, what we think and what we say eventually determines who we believe we are. And the difficulty is anything that threatens that identity, we then artificially see as an existential threat. And I mention this because of the acute stage we're in now in society. But this is nothing new. This is how it has always been. When you identify with a group, you take on that identity as your own. And when identity is what's on the table, morality goes out the window, because identity threat becomes an existential threat. And once it's an existential threat, there is only one morality. In that sense, is your survival. You're here first and foremost as a piece of life to survive as an individual, to do what you came to do. And as an individual piece of life, you can't do anything if you're not here. When your consciousness expands to include a larger group than yourself, say another significant other, you will sacrifice yourself for your significant other, because this relationship, which we call love, means something bigger than me, larger than my sense of myself, is more important to me. And when the me and another create a we, our whole world turns upside down. We move back towards the common collective that we have emerged from. And usually, a self and a significant other, in creating this we, also give birth, these two me's coming together give birth to a third me that's evolving into a sense of separate self, developing a persona mask. That constitutes a family. And a group of families constitute a village. And a group of villages constitute a tribe. And a group of tribes constitutes a nation. And a group of nations constitutes a world. This is a quick movement through the 5 skins of architecture. But the difficulty is we actually have this expansion definition of who we are has got the creative process backwards. It's actually removed us from who we really are, because all 5 of these steps or stages are exactly what they're called: 5 skins of architecture. They're skins around the true identity. And the true identity is the creative force. This true identity, who we really are, is just a process of creation. It's a fractal process, and that fractal process is a fractal of a whole. It imitates the whole. And so when we tend to conceive ourselves as a wave forming out of the ocean and then moving back into the ocean, we somehow miss the vitally important aspect of creation. We are not an ocean. The ocean relates to time and it relates to the soul. It is a more concrete, solid form of its opposite, which is the air. This has been brought to the fore when we think of the Ukrainian flag, which is blue above and yellow below. This blue above is the infinite spirit that's connected to everything and is indivisible. And in the Sikh tradition, we've come to call this Guru, the husband Lord. But this is the exact same thing as what before traditions have called Christ consciousness, the chrysalis, the Christ or the Christ. The Egyptians spelt it Krist, but they didn't pronounce or didn't write the I, the vowel sound. So it was just spelled with 4 letters, Krst, Christ. which leaves out what? The original vowel sound, the I, E. And this I is the conscious whole, the totality, the absolute, what the Sumerians called the abuz. We have come to call the abyss. It's the whole formed when the consciousness descends into the waters of awareness. And what we actually are is a whirlpool in the ocean. This stone, the first step of the creative act is to drop a stone into that still water. And and it's not an accident. English is the most manipulated language on the planet, perhaps in all of history. And because of that, it has the most power, the greatest ability to manipulate. And we are all under that spell of manipulation. But if we wake up, we can take that manipulative process, identify it, analyze it, and utilize it. We can program ourselves. And that's the great opportunity that we're in now. And it's why not to see the state of the world as hopeless, dismal, impossible. To recognize we are on the threshold of a dream where we can all remember who and, more importantly, what we are. The individual persona mask is just a projection of a stone falling into water. As I said, it's the first step of the one, STONE. The first step, the one implements. The inciting incident is for something to capture the attention. And then awareness moves from pure, unadulterated awareness, panoramic awareness with no focus. It moves into a state of attention, focused awareness.
Can I ask
And
you something?
yes,
Yes. You mentioned that the English language is the most manipulative language. Now, coming to languages, are they related to the five elements like earth, air, water, or is
absolutely. Abs-
one language more spiritual than the other?
it's not that any language is more spiritual than another. The language evolved from a particular field, and evolving from a field, it had a purpose to unite a community in order to be able to interact with one another more easily. And and those purposes are different according to geography and chronology. So
Mm.
one group of people will develop a language with one purpose. Another group of people will develop a different language with a different purpose. So it's said that Sanskrit is the language of creation because as far as we can tell, and modern sciences is verifying this myth, we've called it, but it's been carried on since Sanskrit began. That Sanskrit is a language of creation, and the words in Sanskrit most accurately reproduce the vibrational frequency of the names that things are given. So the word for earth, most accurate in Sanskrit, most accurately describes earth. And the word for water most accurately describes water. And the word for air most accurately describes air. And the word for fire most accurately describes fire. And then they're also in subsets. So if you had a word for wood, the Sanskrit word would describe wood in the most accurate approximation of the vibration of wood. But then there's many different kinds of wood, and because there's many different trees or plants that eventually evolve into what we think of as wood because they become trees. They move from bushes to trees. And even Moses in the desert, it's now thought that the burning bush he talked to was probably the acacia bush, which there's acacia bush and acacia trees. And this acacia tree has a high concentration of DMT. So, and DMT is what we in the Sikh tradition and also in some of the Hindu and Tamil traditions we call Amrit. DMT is the liquid, the Christ oil that helps us transcend the bounds of death. So DMT is secreted, or Amrit is secreted at the point of death, and the masses of people who have used this in different forms have all said one of the first things they hear is, you are now going beyond the threshold of death where only the dead can go. So if you're using this Christ oil, it's obvious that you don't have to die physically. The body, the mind-body construct doesn't have to die to go into this realm beyond death. And then that begs the question, well, when this body goes, does the consciousness continue? And are we just getting a sneak peek as though we've opened the door to what's on the other side and we've managed to poke our head through and experience a bit of what it's like on the other side? And I don't want to go too far off piste, but it has been reported with this exponential use of plant spirit medicine, and now even the derivative of them, because they've isolated the dimethyltryptamine, and people are taking it under forced conditions that they're being told by the entities they meet on the other side, sorry, your passport has been revoked. You've come
Wow.
here too often. You're not allowed anymore. And it doesn't matter how much DMT they take, nothing happens, which is an indication that DMT is just what the Tibetans call the spirit horse, that the different plants can take us into these altered states of reality, but it's not the plant themselves. It's because the spirit has aligned itself with the plant. And this has something to do with indigenous populations across the planet will talk about a different plant is the spirit horse to ride in to the body to find the ailment and to facilitate the healing. But the unusual thing, which verifies what I'm saying because it's true, that It's not the actual chemical composition of the plant, because some shamans, some healers use only one plant to heal all ailments, where the other understanding is every plant on the planet is a medicine for some ailment. That the ailment in the process of evolution, as we've departed from the original state of oneness to come into manifestation, ailments of non alignment begin to unfold. And this isn't just for human beings, that there are ailments that the plant world experiences, and there are ailments that the animal world experience. And animals know to eat the plants that will remedy the ailment they're experiencing, because they haven't gone as far away as humans went. And plants will also know to seek out things from the soil that will be a remedy for some ailment they're experiencing. So the consciousness is running through everything, just in different states of vibration. And I hope I haven't gone too far off piste in that, and just want to come back to language, because human language is a further refinement of animal language. We're beginning to understand now we can interpret crow language. There's people who have done massive research and are beginning to understand what crows are saying. And they are speaking to one another, beginning to understand bird song and the stages of bird song, and how bird song tends to stay the same throughout generations, but does alter, and and that the song is an indication to other birds where they are in a process. And so it's a repetition of the song, but that repetition is indicating we're beginning a process, we're moving into the process, we're deep in the process, we're coming out of the process, we've reached the resolution of the process. And we recognize this in evolved mammals, sea mammals, because the school of whales will have a common song, and all the whales are singing that song and can hear each other across vast distances, because the sound waves bounce under the sea, move through the water, and the density means they carry for much, much further. So the whales are singing the same song back and forth to contain the whole, but over time, long periods of time, and I mean years, the song evolves, and it's no longer the same song it was maybe a year ago, certainly a score of years ago. It's changed so that it's almost unrecognizable. So the song is the field that holds the group identity together. But that group identity evolves as the constituents, the individuals, and their particular field evolves, meeting new situations. So, as I was saying before, Sanskrit is a language of creation. We might say English is the language of manipulation. So, manipulation can have two aspects to it. Manipulation can be influence or manipulation. Influence tends to be getting someone else to do something that's good for them. And ultimately, might also be good for the manipulator, but it's certainly the idea of evolving the individual and the collective in a positive direction. That's influence. So it's a specific kind of manipulation where it's a more benevolent and a softer way of growing in a more positive direction. Manipulation tends to be considered as a outside force that is exactly that, forcing a change, pushing an individual or the collective in a direction that's not necessarily in the individual or the group's best interest, but is in the interest of the manipulator. And that's why we've kind of involved this whole idea of influencers in social media. They're people who are influencing by example, leading people to make choices that are at least perceived to be better for them. The problem with influence and manipulation, it's a very fine line. And exerting influence can be an extremely manipulative action. It just doesn't look like it.
Is Gurmukhi a language?
Gurumukhi is a language, and Gurumukhi, thank you for bringing it up because that's exactly where I wanted to step next, is Gurumukhi is a deliberately manipulated language, which is manipulated to be influential. It's the language of remembrance. So we've had this language of creation. We've moved through the point where English became the language of influence at its best and manipulation at its worst. And the reaction to that from the gurus was to recapture what was lost as Aramaic was taken out of Christianity. Because the 10 Sikh gurus are the guardians of the Amrit. They're the guardians of the Christ oil. And they recognized what the one we call Yahshua or Jesus was the advanced guard, the avatar for the Passean age to act as a bridge back to the Aquarian age, where we're reconnected to the living water. And the living water is this Christ oil. So Jesus spoke Aramaic, which was much closer to Sanskrit, perhaps not in its exact tools or words, but in its process. It was both a creative language and a manipulative language and a language of remembrance. It was guiding us back to our original purpose. The difficulty with Aramaic is each word has maybe 3 meanings, every single word. And so a sentence of a few words strung together has maybe 5 different meanings. And a paragraph, a statement, has maybe 9 or 11 different meanings. But all of the different meanings are coherent. They're not meanings that differentiate or oppose one another. They're like a rainbow. They're like a rainbow of meanings that, when brought back into focus, deliver all the same message. They just deliver it in greater detail through the different rays. Is that making some sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so the gurus recognized how far we had fallen off path. And they recognized it because they saw what happened in the Christian church. Guru Nanak went not just to Mecca, Guru Nanak went to Venice. And he went to Venice, as far as I can tell. This is some stuff I have to do my own fact checking, but the plays of Mozart,
Yeah,
they they're telling the same story. The Magic Flute is about this divergence between the feminine and the masculine, and the bringing that back together, and that initiates had to go through first a trial by water and then a trial by fire, because that's where we are in the evolution of human consciousness. The great deluge, the flood that the Sumerians record and then the Hebrew tradition reinterpret. This, I'm not saying that this event isn't a factual event that didn't happen, because all evidence is pointing that there was this huge deluge experienced all across the globe. But it also, in timing, is in perfect cadence with man overcoming his emotions. That animals are emotional beings. So they act largely on sensation, but they do experience emotion, and their emotions will override their sensations. So animals will do something that is painful for them if emotionally they have a tie to the thing that they're doing, i.e., the best example, a mother will go through excruciating pain to deliver her child. And she will do it absolutely willingly. And that is both a genetic response, but it's also because animals had to develop the ability to have an emotional response, which in the plant world is more like I will painfully push myself to grow out of a shadow in order to grasp the sunlight that's outside of the shadow. So a plant will experience pain for its overall growth and the good of the species. Um, I'll want to come back to it, but this is part of the reason Jesus, when he goes into Jerusalem, um, he curses the fig tree. And there's a reason for that, because there's two kinds of figs. One fig that produces a fruit that comes to fruition and one that doesn't. And so the one that doesn't, in essence, it does its job as a plant, but it doesn't provide the fruit an animal, particularly a human being, can eat. And that's why the fig tree was one of the trees in the Garden of Eden. The other was a pomegranate tree, and then the tree of knowledge, the apple tree. These all three trees exist in ancient traditions because they have specific meanings. And again, maybe the next time we talk or after that, we'll talk about the fig tree, because it has a particular relationship where the fig wasp, peculiar to it, both sexes, the male and the female, go through excruciating pain and die directly afterwards in order to make the process of the fig wasp's evolution possible. So this quality of language, the same thing has happened. We can think of as language as a parasite on the organism of creation.
Doctor, I've got one more question. How do
Yes.
you account for certain words like mat, chromat, om, ong? It goes back to the Egyptian time. They have used the word like mat, chromat. Then you also got it in Sanskrit. Then you also got it in the Guru Granth Sahib.
Okay, so this goes back. It's not commonly understood, but if you read Plato, then you'll know that Plato studied from Socrates. Socrates studied from Plato's grandfather, who Plato never studied with because he was too young. But Socrates, who was Plato's teacher, was the student of Plato's grandfather. Plato's grandfather traveled to Egypt and studied with the ancient Egyptian masters. Plato, it would seem, because of understanding that story told to him by Socrates, eventually went to Egypt to study himself. But what the Egyptian master told Plato's grandfather was, you Greeks come to us to study because you think we are this great civilization and the source of wisdom. But if it weren't for you, the Greeks, who are the descendants of the Atticans, and if it weren't for the Atticans, who are the descendants of the pre-Atticans saved the world from absolute tyranny by none other than the Atlanteans.
Are you
We
talking
have
about
this
the
idea that the Atlanteans are this wonderful group, which they were once, but great power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. The ancient Egyptians used the word Ma'at with a double A, Ma'at, to describe the goddess of wisdom. But the Greeks called the pre Greek goddess, she was a Titan, they called her Métis. Métis was the goddess of wisdom before the Olympians. So this is ancient goddess. And we've taken that word to become mother, right? There's magic and there's logic. Magic is the masculine, rational male mind, and magic is the my other self, the original wisdom, which is pure awareness. It doesn't figure things out, it allows them to unfold. So, in the Christian tradition, in the secret teachings of Jesus that are in the 15 missing books that we've rediscovered and then have confirmed the Ethiopians always had those books, in those 15 additional books, there's a process, a divine process that all consciousness goes through when it goes through the whirlpool, the wormhole. And there's a reason there's 15 books, because the creative process is 5 steps. We can describe every step in the universe in 5 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Seed, roots, plant or tree, plan. A plan in time is a plant. The plant, when it reaches its crest, the zenith is the plant, but the cresting of the wave is when the flower presents itself. It's the flourishing. This is human consciousness. And then what comes after the flourishing? The fruition. The fifth step is the fruit, which has the seed within it. So we come full circle. This is why in Aramaic, the word kala means both bride and finished, complete, done. It's where we get the Arabic word kalas. Kalas, done, finished, over. So when Jesus on the cross, his last words after forgive them, Father, they know not what they do, his last word was kalah, which means it's done. And that's the only way it's ever interpreted in the Western Bible. But actually, what he's saying, and I only understood this when I started to study Guru Mukhi. It led me back to the Hebrew, which led me back to the Aramaic. Kala also means bride. What he was saying is the bride has come full circle. The process is finished. This is all of our mission here, to come full circle. It's the Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail. The point the serpent was not leading Adam and Eve into sin, and sin just is a Farsi term, which means just to miss the mark. This is why the Gurumukhi includes Farsi. The idea is understanding what you aim at. The only mistake is to aim at something and miss. And this is the problem with this whole emergence of the law of attraction. I haven't used that term for 25, 30 years because really it's the law of resonance. Like attracts like by like vibrates in resonance with like. It's when we bring ourselves into alignment, back into alignment. Now our purpose becomes obvious. Each one of us has a song to sing here. And when we come into alignment, suddenly the original song of creation starts to vibrate the nodal points of our chord. And our chord is our spinal cord. The 7 chakras aren't actually 7. That's what the magic flute is about. It's a pentatonic flute. So the first and 7th chakras are the blow hole and the sound hole of the magic flute, which is you. That's why the Tibetans only talk about 5 chakras. The 5 chakras relate to the 5 vowel sounds. Some linguists try to say that there are 7 vowels and prove it with what the Greeks identify, but understand 2 of those vowels are actually diphthongs. And in fact, the most important mixing of vowels is a triphthong. And that opens up when we cross the veil of the 4th chakra. So the 2 lower vowel sounds are ooh, like ooh, that feels good. Ooh, that tastes good. And oh, when we wake up from the dwam of the 5 thieves, the sensual sensations that draw us into being a quote unquote cheap whore. The whore is mentioned in the Bible as a allegory for the body, which sells itself cheap for sense pleasures. But when we can cross from the third chakra to the fourth chakra consciousness, we open up a possibility. So the ooh is caught in sensual pleasure. It's chasing pleasure. That's hedonistic existence. When we move into the navis, we move into oh, that's pattern recognition. We begin to see how things are. If we're in O long enough, we move into ah. We let go of the things we've chasing. We let go of the dominance hierarchy. We let go of thinking we're better than anyone else because we've seen something and we know more, and recognize, oh, we're all here exhibiting specific negative patterns of behavior so that we can identify them in others, but also show them our own negative patterns, showing them to others. And by that, we can then recognize, oh, I still have some patterns I need to refine. I can't see them in the mirror. So somebody else has volunteered to manifest those negative things so I can see them when I look in their eyes. And then we reach from the state of we call out the pattern of behavior. We analyze it. Hey, I can see what you're doing over there. Oi, it's this calling out. And then we recognize, oh, but those patterns are within me. How can I call them out in me? That's what Om was all about. Om, it's not a coincidence. This is when you begin to realize how beautiful all of it is. We call measures of resistance to electrical flow ohms, OHM, named after the man who discovered them. Discovered that there was a resistance to flow and that different objects or different mediums have different degrees of resistance. Well, Om, the word Om, has resistance to the flow of consciousness outward. So when we chant Om, we resist that flow. And when the flow is resisted, it turns in on itself, which means we have pattern recognition. Oh, that person's a bit of a horse's behind because they do this thing. And that person over there is a bit of a horse's behind because they do this other repeated pattern. And then we begin to recognize what's called nonviolent communication. Oh, the other person isn't a horse's behind. They're just another me. And I need to change the way I talk to them if I want to have good communication. Right? I have my belief system, they have their belief system. How can I turn it in on myself to look at myself and eradicate my problems? How can I identify my beliefs, which actually I begin to understand they're just opinions. And opinions are not to be mistaken as truth. And this is where human language comes in. Human language evolves to get closer to a truth, but it is never the truth. Because the truth only exists when we get back to the original language, which is where you started this bit of the conversation, which is mathomagic. Mathemagic is mathemagics. Mathematic, mathemagic. It's the same word. Maths is the original language of the divine. Mathematical formulas are the words in the original language of creation, and numbers are the original constituents or letters that make up the words. And then if we look at that, we look at the original language. If there's only five vowel sounds, the five vowel sounds relate to the five steps in the act of creation and the five stages of consciousness we move up and down through in the act of creation. Now that's taken, we have 4 minutes left to reach the hour point. I might go a little bit over today, but that's only, I'll ask if that's okay when I finish the last thing I'm going to say. And then we can look at whether there's more to discuss, and you're open to that. But in these last 4 minutes, I just want to identify this 4 stages or 4 steps in the process of creation are mirrored by the human mind body construct. So there is the intuitive body, which is closest to source. Intuitive, it's the inner teacher. Then that's where all inspiration comes from. It comes out of awareness. But most of us have forgotten we even have an inner teacher, and we become beguiled by the mind. But that's not our fault, because it's a process of evolution. We were originally in a state of awareness or oneness, and then we evolved into this state of individuating consciousness, which we think of as identity. So identity became mineral, plant, animal, human. 4 states of consciousness. The mineral first became aware of itself and started acting. Individual minerals started acting with other individualized minerals. So you have the first act of creation, you might say, is that we can see readily is rust. Ferrous oxide, iron and oxide get together, and what happens? My sablo kara leave rust marks on my arm all the time when it's hot and sweaty and my kara falls down to where it can't go any farther up my arm. When I'm working with my hands above my head and suddenly there's rust marks on my arm. My body can absorb that rust. It can do things with it. Without iron in the blood, the oxygen can't connect to the blood and be distributed through the body. So this first act of minerals individuating and then minerals communicating leads to more advanced life form. So light drops to the ground. It now changes to mineral consciousness. It's horizontal. It's the landscape. Then some memory of where it came from. The light wants to go back to where it came from, back to source. So now plant consciousness evolves to reach up to capture the light, to draw it inside so it can evolve and go back to the light. That same consciousness goes, it's now vertical, but going home, that same consciousness now goes horizontal again, because the plant is in a fixed state and it wants to be free. So the first movement to freedom is moving back away from the earth. The second is going horizontal and having 4 legs to walk on. Now it's mobile, it's free to move so it can chase the light. Now, a plant can only bend to catch the light. Now the animal can move back and forth and follow the light where it goes. It can go to a warm climate. It can hunt during the day, or it can choose to hunt during the night. It has freedom. And then human beings stood on two legs, again, wanting to go back to the light. Now the chakras, which animals have, plants have, minerals, it's harder to describe, so I'm not going to go there. But we can see the chakras in a plant. We can see the chakras in an animal. We can see the chakras in a human being. We have ways of observing them now. That's come to the full circle of 1 hour. If you'd like, I wanted to review this so that we understand that the process we were opening ourselves to is a cosmic process. It began when the universe began, if it ever began. Maybe we're just looking at one nodal, one vibration of string theory in between two nodal points of the universe opening and collapsing and opening, collapsing, because that's exactly what a chakra does. It draws information in, information and energy in, and then it projects out the other side with energy taking on the shape of old information, but with the opportunity to take on new information. That's what we are. We are a whirlpool, a vortex made of 5 different vortexes. There's the 4 vortexes I described, and then there's the point where they overlap, which is really the vortex itself. It's 4 flowing in, 4 flowing out, 4 flowing in, 4 flowing out. And that's the nature of our chakra system, that there are 4 material, dualistic chakras, you might say, or states of consciousness, which relate to the intuition, relate to the imagination in the mind. The mind is the holder of the imagination. The
Hello. Hello.
Sorry. Somebody called and I tried to hang them up, and I actually hung myself up instead. So I hope we're all still here and we're recording and you can hear me. But that was could I have a little shout back just to confirm I'm not talking to myself?
No, we can hear.
Okay. That's the great kind of shout back. I appreciate that it was a laughter. So,
I'm glad you're still alive.
And that was a particularly important interruption, because it's just meant my real world has both crashed just before this, because I had a conversation with Doljit, who brought me to the group. And then the person who just called is the person who's like the focal point of me going through 3 vortexes at the same time, of 3 people critically damaging their hip or spine, the base for the spine, and then the spine. And one of them is quite sadly but understandably passed away. And I'm just helping the person who just called while helping someone else who has damaged the vertebrae that I damaged when I had an accident 30 years ago. So there's some kind of synchronicity happening here. So is there any questions well, let me distill it down to this one thing, understanding that our spine is an antenna. The base to the antenna is literally the sacrum leading to the coccyx, where the coccyx is fused with the pelvis. And so some will say the spine is the Christos because, or the housing for it because there's 33 vertebrae, but actually there's only 26 vertebrae because 7 of the vertebrae have fused to form just 2 vertebrae. And this is important to our conversation, that understanding how you work in relationship to the creation is you have 26 vertebrae, which are correlating to the 26 outward preferred directions of hyperspace. And the spinal cord is the 27th. It's the one common center point. You are both the field and the current flowing through it. But if you want to understand why you're here, the one purpose we all share, and your individual, unique purpose, they are 2 different things. You're meant to remember who and what you are, this common ubiquitous purpose that is distributed throughout the field. God is a circle whose circumference is nowhere and whose center point is everywhere. There are no limits to the common ubiquitous purpose. It's an evolving field of possibility. And just because it's never been done before doesn't mean it can't happen. And it doesn't mean it can't happen quickly. That's why you're here, to do what's never been done, so that everyone else here can do something else that's never been done, so that universe can evolve to become something that's never been, no matter how many universes have been before. But that also means becoming the center point. And the center point is when you quiet yourself, or in more frank terms, shut the F up and start listening to the whispering of the one voice, whispering through the inarticulate murmuring of your heart. And it will tell you why you, the unique individual, never been before, never will be again. You are here. You are needed. There is something about you. You have information that no one else has, and has seen that information through lenses that no one else has. With as the Spider-Man film, right? With great lenses comes great power. You have the power to see the world in a way that no one else sees it. No one else has ever seen it, and no one else will ever see it. And with that, it means you have a unique perspective. You are the center of a particular way of seeing life, which, if you can bring that to fruition, you can make everyone else see things in a different way, where they recognize their divinity and then bring that divinity to bear on the circumstance they're in. I hope that's made some sense. That's what the drawings are about, of recognizing there's one light. That's the unborn seed of divinity. It drops into the matrix, which has all the colors in it. But the matrix, the Maha, the Mati, the Mother Mata, she absorbs all of it. And in that process, that 8-ball, the light is either absorbed or reflected. She's absorbing all of it so that each one of us can absorb all of it and then reflect the full spectrum of who we are, but also recognize the particular ray of light that we've embodied in this lifetime, the particular narrative we've decided to cast ourselves into so that we can play our part. May you all, in the silence of meditation, hearing the one, the divine, whispering to you, Vaheguru, 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 whispering Vaheguru through the inarticulate murmuring of your heart, and begin to build that rainbow bridge back to source. Become the one who speaks the rainbow language of the heart. The one that can hear wherever somebody else is at, whatever vibrational frequency, whatever chakra they're working from. May you speak from your aura so that they can hear you. May you listen from your aura so you can hear them. And recognize in every moment there is the opportunity to remember your divinity in reminding them of theirs. And maybe at that point, I should fall quiet and ask if there's any questions. And if not, then sweet dreams.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wishing the same for you, 100-fold blessings, hugs and love. Looking forward to next week and more information from you. It has been a blessing, but the tummy still asks for dinner.
Yes. Yes. The mind wants some information to digest, and the belly still needs to be fed. So we'll pick up where we've just left off next week.
Certainly.
And that will be the practical, what we do over the next 5 months.
Yeah.
And the week
Thank
after
you.
that, we can talk about how we do it day by day. Thank you so much. It's been a blessing to me to be part of this group, and I wish you all the best.
Wish you all the best too. It's been a great, great blessing for us to have you. Bless you. Night, night.
Night, night.
Night, night, everyone. Love you. Big hug.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, dear Vardata. God bless.
God bless you too, sweetheart.
God bless. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.